Good morning, everybody. I'm Carlton Hilson, and I'm joined by Joe Barnello. We're both labor and employment attorneys in Burr's Birmingham office, and welcome to the first Burr Morning Show of 2024, and Happy New Year. We want to talk to you guys today about the new Alabama overtime tax exemption that is actually in effect now. It went into effect January 1st, and this is something that has received a lot of attention. We'll talk about how it was passed and what it means, but Joe and I actually authored an article about it when the bill was passed, and we noticed that it received a significant number of clicks and views, and so we knew it was something that employers were interested in because it's something that affects everybody. So we thought it was a good topic to do a Burr Morning Show on. So Joe, why don't you take it away and tell everybody what the change in the tax law is?
Yeah, so with this new law, the Alabama which was passed in November of 2023, and as Carlton said, took effect here in the last week. What it does is it creates a new definition for an exemption of gross income under Alabama's taxation and revenue code. So what that new exception is, it's amounts received by employees, hourly employees, that's paid to them as overtime for hours worked over 40 hours in a work week. So what it's essentially doing is it's going to put a little more money in employees' paychecks each week if they work overtime. And but it also makes it where employers are the ones who are having to do this and having to make certain reports to the state. So like I said, it took effect here in January 1st. And for now, it's in effect for a year and a half until June 29th of 2025. But the legislature has indicated that could be extended based off the reception of this law and how much money is actually benefiting employees versus how much taxes the state is losing off of it.
So Joe, to be clear, if an hourly employee works overtime hours in Alabama, and we're counting overtime as anything more than 40 hours in a work week, they no longer will have to pay state income taxes on that overtime compensation they receive. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And this is going to apply to all employers that have to withhold Alabama state taxes.
Does this affect federal income taxes at all?
No, this is just going to apply to state income taxes. So that 5% that comes out for state.
Okay. And I think one of the keys here is that unlike many of the other wage hour updates that employers receive or we provide that talk about proposed regulations or proposed rules or proposed laws that then have to go through the long convoluted rulemaking process, this is actually something that was passed in the state of Alabama with bipartisan support. It was passed in November, and it went into effect on January 1st, 2024. So it is in effect right now. And it's something, again, that affects all. If you have any hourly employees and there's any chance they're going to work more than 40 hours in a work week, it affects you, and you need to respond to it. There are changes you need to make to your payroll procedures. The reason the law was passed is, look, everybody's experiencing the inflation and higher costs, and Governor Ivey signed this bill with the intent to help employees that work long, hard hours offset some of those higher costs and inflation. But also employers, everyone on this call knows it's difficult to hire employees. And so one of the things this bill is intended to do is provide an additional incentive for employees to be willing to work overtime hours because they're no longer going to have to pay state income taxes on overtime compensation. And the reason you see on the slide here, we say it's essentially in effect, a 5% pay increase on work over 40 hours for hourly employees is because the Alabama state income tax rate is 5%, a flat 5% essentially. And, like we're saying, that will no longer have to be paid for overtime pay.
Yeah. So, and then the next question is, which employees is this affecting? And it's just hourly employees. not salaried employees is the main thing, and not commissioned employees. And it's only on hours actually worked. So the Department of Revenue, who is putting out guidance on this new amendment, has emphasized that PTO, sick leave, and vacation pay is not included in these calculations. So for a lot of employers who may provide a benefit to their employees by counting their PTO or sick leave or vacation as counting towards their getting to that 40 hours for that overtime threshold for the week, are going to have to bifurcate or figure out a way to differentiate their internal overtime calculations versus what they're going to have to report to the Alabama Department of Revenue. The other thing here that's kind of tricky is that the law says full-time hourly wage employees, but the Department of Revenue has stated that this applies to any full-time, part-time, or seasonal employee that works over 40 hours in a work week.
What about if an employer has an employee that is salaried non-exempt, so they receive overtime, but they're salaried? Would this law apply to them?
No, not at all. It's very clear that it's going to be just hourly employees here. So even so it's a different calculation than overtime for instance, under the Fair Labor Standards Act. This is a little more specific to just hourly employees. And then one thing that's going to affect all employers right away is that it's income received into starting January 1st, 2024. So what that means is even if an employee was working hours, let's say the work week was December 29th through January 5th or 4th, even those hours from December 29th to December 31 are going to count towards this calculation as long as that money was received after January 1 or starting January 1.
So we're sitting here on Friday, the first Friday of the year, which is the first payday for many employees in Alabama. And what you're saying is this change really should have already gone into effect.
Yes, or starting today. Yeah.
Starting today, yeah. And here's an example of the tax savings hourly employees that work overtime can expect to receive. And as you will see in our example, it's not much, but it is something, and it's cumulative over the next year and a half, so it does add up. But take, for example, an hourly employee who earns $20 per hour and works 5 hours of overtime per week. They will expect to receive a biweekly pay increase of about $15 or $7.50 an hour that they will not be paying in state income taxes. And if our math is correct, that totals up to about $390 in annual state income tax savings for an employee, again, who makes $20 an hour and works an average of 45 hours a week. So, it's not a tremendous savings, but it is something.
Yeah, and I think another thing to note here is that the 5% increase or savings there for employees applies to all compensation earned over 40 hours, not just the 0.5 for overtime. It's going to be the whole 1.5 or double time for overtime, depending on how employers pay it.
Yeah, and I think another point, Joe, is that if an employee works overtime, they only get this benefit on the overtime pay and the overtime hours, not their total compensation for the work week, right?
Correct. Yeah, sorry. So hours 1 through 40 are staying regular. There's no change to that. But hours of anything over 40 hours, that any compensation is going over that 40 is going to be affected by this new amendment.
Okay. Tell us about the reporting requirements.
Yeah, so this is what's going to be important to everyone on the Zoom call here is what do employers, payroll, the HR departments have to do here? So as we alluded to earlier, this law is only in effect for a year and a half, but could be extended. And for the legislature, the department, the governor to determine whether or not this law is going to be extended, they wanted to get a little information, or could be a lot of information actually, from employers on two different scales here. First is that employers are going to have to report by January 31st of this year, so here in 4 weeks or so, two things. The total amount of overtime compensation received by hourly waged employees as compensation for work performed in excess of 40 hours a week, and two, the total number of employees that received such compensation in the year 2023. And this is going to have to be reported on the Form A3, which the Department of Revenue has given instructions on their website on how to do that if there's any confusion there. And then two, on a monthly and quarterly basis, employers are going to have to provide that same information on their forms A6 and A1 until June 29th, or for the tax year starting January 1st of this year up to June 30th of 2025. I'm still getting used to those the new year dates going right now.
All right, so to summarize this, or to clean this up, there's really 3 action items we want to leave you guys with, and these 3 items apply to all employers in the state of Alabama. Number 1, again, this is in effect now, so if you have not already, you should be updating your payroll procedures so that you are not withholding Alabama state income tax from hourly employees who work overtime. That is in effect now. It should be done, or you need to make sure it is done. Second thing is, as Joe just mentioned, the first reporting requirement to the Alabama Department of Labor is due on January 31st, 2024. So you need to be preparing and collecting up that information that needs to be reported to the state, and then start reporting on either a monthly or quarterly basis information about overtime worked by your employees. And third, and I think this is something that's lost in this, and it's maybe the most important thing, is this is a good thing for employees. Less taxes is a good thing, and it's something that's going to make, it's more money in their pocket, and it's something that is going to make employees happy. And employers need to use it as an opportunity to positively message to employees, especially in these difficult economic times where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of labor unrest. It's an opportunity to tell employees that, you know, you're going to be able to keep more of your hard-earned money when you work long, hard hours. So, you know, we've worked with several clients already on providing, you know, written notices that are, you know, very, very positive, and tell employees who might not be aware that they're going to be keeping more of their overtime money. And also talking points for management and supervisors to notify employees of this payroll change. Employees need to know about this, and they should know about it. So if you're interested in that, feel free. Here's our contact information. Feel free to, you know, call Joe or I, or shoot us an email, and we'll be glad to work with you on any of these items. You know, the payroll changes, the Department of Labor reporting, or most importantly, the best way to communicate these payroll changes to your employees.